Although he technically landed on his feet, Metal didn't stay on them. Rather, he slipped and fell on his back. He laid there, with nothing more to do but stare at the ceiling vent in blank embarrassment. At least no one saw him, especially not Sonic, who jumped from the vent without looking himself. Sonic didn't even technically land on his feet, he simply fell on top of Metal's legs and slammed his face into Metal's forehead. Sonic immediately leapt up. "Let's just pretend that didn't happen," he said. He brushed the dust from his chest and added, "Where are we?" Metal slowly pulled himself up. He had landed on polished and grey concrete, but that wasn't the reason he had slipped. Responsibility for that laid on the oil slick that spread as a broken, rainbow foam across the floor. "I am uncertain, but we need to investigate," Metal said. Sonic took a step forward, but Metal spread his arm out in front of him. He would lead. The room was dim, and even though his light was still on, it was difficult to see. Then he heard it. The noise was soft and infrequent, but his audio sensor still picked up a faint and continuous pop, like that of fizzing soda. "Did you hear that?" Sonic said. Metal nodded. He took a step forward and motioned Sonic to follow. Each step was deliberate and slow. The floor was impossibly slick. Sight and sound were merely two of his senses, and Metal had others. Senses beyond what organic creatures had. Senses like his radio. Whatever had jammed it appeared to be gone, and with each pop, high-frequency wave crashed across his sensors. In the distance, he saw a faint blue light. It was tiny and burning, like a pilot light. They crept towards it. "That sound, it's getting louder," Sonic said. "Not only is the sound getting louder, but so are the waves. I can hear them on the radio," Metal said. Sonic turned his head. "And that means—" Metal looked back at Sonic. "That light emits radio waves. That means it is radioactive." Sonic stared at him with his mouth open, so Metal quickly added, "But there is no need to worry. The radiation levels are too low to cause harm." "Worry? Why would I be worried? I was never worried before, and I'm certainly not worried now." Metal said nothing and walked forward, but Sonic continued. "I'm Sonic the Hedgehog, and a little blue light would never worry good old Sonic the Hedgehog." They approached the light. It glowed behind the sheet of glass at the bottom of an enormous, pressurized tank. A single tube connected the tank to the glass chamber, and a sleek conveyor belt hummed as it carried green-tinted silver ingots. Sonic scooped an ingot into his hand. "What is this?" Metal picked it from Sonic's hand and held it to the light. He scraped his fingers across it and felt the symbols NI stamped lightly in its surface. "This is purified solid nickel. But why?" Metal took the tubing in his hand. It was light, and pressure bulged from the inside. He followed it to its source, a rusted cylinder with a faded sticker peeling from its surface. Metal tore off the sticker. The symbol H was stamped above the cartoonish fire. "Hydrogen and nickel? But that doesn't make any sense." Metal turned to face Sonic, who had idly stuck an ingot in his mouth like a lollipop. "What are you doing?" Metal asked. Sonic quickly spit the ingot to the floor, like a child caught with his hand in the cookie jar, and strolled to the machine. Nothing at all. So what'd it do?" Metal pulled a panel off the machine and froze. Inside, a twisted mess of power cables and an array of silver, blue, and purple chaos drives. Nickel ingots sat in an enormous heap. At least, the top of the heap was nickel. The bottom of the heap bled globs of golden, metallic crumbs. "It's not possible. This should not be possible." Sonic waved his hand in front of Metal's face. "Out of all the insanity we've seen, you're upset by a glowing blue tube?" "You don't understand." Metal turned to Sonic. It's a fusion reactor." Sonic folded his arms and merely stared. "And?" "Fusion is the pinnacle of clean energy production. Using only nickel and hydrogen, this machine could create a nearly unlimited supply of energy." "Fusion? What is that? Some type of dance music?" Metal shook his head. As usual, he needed to explain everything, though at least Sonic was curious. "Consider the sun. Contrary to popular belief, the sun does not burn. Rather, it takes hydrogen and fuses it together into helium. Fire is a chemical process, but the reaction that powers the sun is a nuclear process." Sonic tapped his foot and stared at the ceiling, but Metal continued. Nuclear reactions release far more energy than any chemical process because the two use an entirely different set of forces. Electromagnetism drives chemical processes, but the strong and weak forces... Wait, Sonic said. The strong and weak forces? There's no way, you're just making this up. Metal cast Sonic a side glance. I am not! The strong nuclear force and the weak nuclear force are two of the four fundamental forces of the universe. Without them, atoms would fall apart. Sonic waved his hand. Do me a favor and spare the lecture. Give me the executive summary. Metal picked the nickel ingot from the floor. This is nickel. A nickel atom has 28 protons. A hydrogen atom has a single proton. When they combine, they create copper, an element with 29 protons. He dropped the nickel in Sonic's hand. It's an amazing process. When something as minuscule as a single proton hits the nickel atom, it completely changes its very nature. It turns into an entirely different element, something brand new and wholly unrelated to its precursor. Sonic dropped the ingot as horror flooded his face. If Nega can create a machine such as this, it implies his understanding of the fundamental nature of reality far exceeds anything anyone has ever achieved, including Eggman. Metal stopped. Sonic was staring down at his cybernetic leg, to which the nickel had helplessly magnetized. He grimaced. Tiny change that makes it completely different. Metal froze. For his entire existence, he had never seen Sonic as anything but confident. Whether he was racing or destroying Eggman's machinery, it didn't matter. Sonic was nothing less than joyous. But not now. Metal recognized that expression on Sonic's face, because it was something he had felt every waking moment of his life. I mean, it's not like... Metal stammered. He glanced at Sonic and stopped. Sonic looked away, and Metal clenched his fists. He knelt down, pulled the ingot from Sonic's leg, and tossed it back on the conveyor belt. I suppose they are not technically completely different. Really, in truth, it depends on your definition. Sonic stared into his eyes. He paused, and a slight smile crept across his face, but as he opened his mouth to speak, the air above them shattered. There you are, Sonic. You can run, but you can't hide. Metal knew that voice. It was utterly familiar and unwelcome. It boomed from overhead, though Metal could not see from where. Nega! Sonic threw his head up. Show yourself! Steam burst from above, and Metal leaned over as it clouded his optical screen. He could see nothing, but he felt Sonic grab his arm. A shattered shadow emerged from the screen. As it slowly lifted, Metal wiped the condensation from his screen and looked up. E2048 loomed above them with both its claws outstretched. Metal had no time to react. Sonic charged from behind him, throwing more steam in Metal's face, and leapt directly for E2048's screen. E2048 snatched Sonic's leg between its claws. It held Sonic upside down, and Sonic fruitlessly floundered in its grip. Now I want you to stop and think about what you've done, Nega said from E2048's tinny radio. I have been more than hospitable to you, and even let you keep your little paperweight pal over there, and this is the thanks I get? Metal ran towards the conveyor belt. Nothing Nega said would ever provide positive utility, and he had to act quickly. As Sonic continued to struggle, he said, So don't keep me hanging. Tell me what you want. All I want is for you to behave. Steam rose from E2048's engine, and Metal knew he was running out of time. He scooped a single ingot into his hand and threw it with all the force his pistons could muster. It flew through the air and crashed into E2048's claw. Its grip waned, and Sonic tore himself free. Sonic landed and stood up. What kind of guests would we be if we didn't make sure to nickel and dime you? Nega screeched over the radio, and E2048 slammed to the ground. Meds, after I stun him, you take him out. You can do that, right? Metal nodded, and Sonic raced forward. Metal quickly followed, but his pace was hardly more than a jog. He cursed his broken engine. Sonic spun into the air, landed ajar on the ceiling, and launched himself at E2048. His foot struck its optical screen, and Sonic clicked the magnet to life. The eyes on the screen distorted into waves of red light, and E2048's engine sputtered. It fell, and its chassis landed on the hydrogen tubing above the reactor. The pipe snapped, and E2048 crashed to the ground, caught in the piping like an insect in a web. Metal skidded to a halt as he stopped in front of the fallen robot. He reached into his database and estimated a rough model of how E2048 was likely to be engineered. Based on a few assumptions, there were 2 ways to deactivate it. The first would be to simply smash its hard drive. With no hard drive, a robot would have no brain, and that would render it utterly inert. The second was to cut its power cord. With no power, the robot would deactivate. 2 choices. He could smash the hard drive, effectively killing any sense of identity E2048 had, just as Eggman had done to him. It would certainly decrease the probability of E2048 as a recurring threat. Or he could rip out the cord. E2048 would deactivate, but it would still have its data. It would still have its brain. It was as Sonic had said. He had a choice. "What are you waiting for? Take him out!" "Right, I will take him out." Metal crawled on E2048's chassis and angled his claws just above the gap in his armor. With a precise cut, he thrust his hands into its neck and grabbed a fistful of cables. He tore the cables, they snapped free, and Metal tumbled backwards to the ground. The hole in E2048's armor sparked, and slowly, its optical screen faded to black. "And that's how it's done! Way to go, Meds!" Sonic jumped to the ground and lifted Metal back to his feet. "So what's next?" Metal could only watch in horror as the broken cables in E2048's chassis continued to spark. He felt the slick oil beneath his feet and heard the rush of hydrogen gas leaking from the snapped pipes. He leapt into Sonic's arms and grabbed his back. He only had time to say a single word. "Run!"